Hey everybody, welcome back to Behind the Joystick. I'm your host today, Cordy, and I'm here with Meg. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. For people who don't know about you, tell us more about yourself.
All right. Hi, my name is Meg Danaher. I am the Assistant Director of Esports at Syracuse University. And my job basically entails facility operations, student life engagement. I'm the club advisor for the extracurricular club that we have here on campus for the RSO. And yeah, so I help plan some smaller events. I work with local sponsors and groups and just trying to get some cool stuff happening here at Syracuse University.
That is awesome. How did you end up there?
It's a long story. A lot of networking is one of the big things I would say.
For
Um,
sure.
and anything, especially in this day and age, networking is what gets a lot of people a lot of jobs. So this is my third job in the collegiate esports space. My first job was at a university called Viterbo University in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I was there for 6 months. Wisconsin just wasn't for me. Too cold. I'm from Georgia
Oh, I believe
originally.
it.
Oh yeah, and I moved in January, so that was like, okay, maybe I don't need to be here.
Right.
So from there, I went to Butler University. I was there for nearly 2 years. Went from coordinator to senior coordinator of esports there. Just wasn't a great fit for me. Just wanted to have, I wanted to work on a bigger team and work with a lot more people and have a lot more collaboration.
For sure.
And so basically getting close to the end of the school year, my second year at Butler, I started doing some applications and like looking for jobs. I was kind of applying for a little bit of everything. But Sari Keitlin graciously sent me over the job listing, and I was like, okay, I think this might be a great fit for me. It does a lot of the stuff. The job focus is a lot more student engagement side versus recruiting, which I don't like recruiting. So I was like, this might be a good fit for me. And then from there, went through the interview process, and then I got the job. So super exciting stuff.
That is awesome. And then before all this, you were also in Full Sail. I believe we were like both on the Armada.
Armada.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was fun. What were you doing in the Armada space?
So in Armada, I when I had initially come to Full Sail, my initial aspiration was to work in the film industry.
Mhm.
Um, Believe it or not. And when I was there, I remember seeing signs around campus for like, "Hey, we're doing open tryouts for Heroes of the Storm," and I was like, you know what? I want to find a club here on campus. I'm from Georgia originally. I'm away from home. I want to see if I can find a community of people to like get engaged with. And I love gaming, so let's just try out for it. Uh, Less than like a month later, Heroes of the Storm got axed by Blizzard. And so another game I played at the time, Overwatch, they were also holding Overwatch tryouts. And so I went in, basically had never been in like a competitive environment before.
Mhm.
But I was like, you know what? We're going to fake it till we make it. So I remember being like super vocal in my comms with people, like trying to be like, oh, we should totally go this way and do this plan without like really knowing what I was actually doing. So I was like around gold at
Right.
that point in the ranking system. Try out for the team though. And Jameson Durrell and Hoyt Dingus at the time, they were like, "We loved your communication. Please be the captain of the team." And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's a lot of work."
Right.
Um, but it was a really good step for me to start trying to learn that communication skills, that team organizing, that management, and I really appreciated it. And then from there, I was the captain of the A and B teams for around a year or so. I left Overwatch and I started the Rainbow Six Siege team on campus. Around that same point, I then got elected as the student president for the organization during COVID. Did like lots of live streaming and try to keep the community going through the COVID pandemic, and
For
then
sure.
finished out by being the coach and Apex Legends captain for that organization. So, yeah, I did a little bit of everything, and I really enjoyed every minute of it. And I really think it made my Full Sail experience.
For sure. Do you think that like everything you've done from Full Sail all the way to now has helped you with the assistant director position you're doing?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I really valued a lot of the stuff that I did as a student, and it really helped with kind of guiding me to where I am now. Because I think a lot of esports, especially collegiate esports professionals in the space now, are kind of like they're at the top of their ladder, so to speak. Like
Mhm.
I am the director, I'm the assistant director, I'm a senior coordinator. I am like the top of my ladder. So in our younger years, where we should not should, but traditionally in other fields you'd be going through like I'm an apprentice of this position and I'm learning from someone who's above me who's going to be teaching me all these skills and guiding me on this path. Our time for that kind of like guidance and leadership experience was when we were students, because as soon as we graduated, we were then thrust into leadership positions. And now we have people looking up to us saying, no, you're my mentor now, so I need you to figure it out.
Right.
So it's really difficult, but I think whatever we do in college really helps form us, especially because I think it's really important for like the general, like any professional space, but I think it's extra important in the collegiate field, especially if you're going from being 21, 22, just graduated, and now you're going to be thrust into a full-time position as a director of esports at an institution.
For sure. What would you say like would be your challenges for all of that? Especially being so young.
Luckily, I'm 25 now, but I still feel young sometimes. Sometimes I feel old, and I hear Zoomer talk around my office, and I'm like, "What the heck are you guys saying?"
Right.
Um, but there are a lot of challenges that come with that. Just the general trying to figure out how to guide the generation under you. I definitely talked to a lot of students that like, "Hey, I need help with my resume," and I'm like, I remember like just a year ago when I was recrafting my resume to start applying for jobs. So it's trying to take those skills, and I think with esports, especially with organizations like Esports and Coffee and other kind of like collaborative groups, I don't want to use this word, but the elders in our space, so to speak, like the Sari Keitlins, the Eugene Friars, etc., and within our space, kind of act as those like mentors in that kind of collective like knowledge base. So if there's something I don't know, I definitely have a huge network of people I can reach out to say, hey, I'm a little bit lost on this. I don't know how to approach this situation or this kind of conflict or whatever. And it's really important. And it goes back to what I was talking about before, but like networking is so important, because even if you're looking for guidance outside of the industry, maybe you're looking for guidance from somebody who works in like a video games industry because you have a student who really wants to work at a developing company.
For sure.
I don't know the first thing about that, but I do have a network of people I can reach out to and say, hey, what was your path to get here? What would you give as guidance to those who are now trying to get into that space? So networking, because as the young professionals, we are sometimes asked to know it all, and you don't know what you don't know until you ask the question and then you learn. So yeah, networking is my word of the day.
Right. To piggyback on the networking part, you were last night in the Esports and Coffee talk show with Sari and like just a bunch of honorable people right there. Like, are
Yeah.
your mentors? How did you like? How was that feeling to just kind of sit with all of them?
Oh, I love whenever there's opportunities to be able to just kind of sit around, drink coffee, or in my case, it was drinking Coke, and just be able to like talk about like where we are, what's going on, what does the space look like, what do we project. It's just nice. I mean, it's like the old 1920 movies where people are sitting around smoking cigars with a glass of whiskey and they're just talking about their jobs. Like that's what it is for us when we're able to kind of, because again, we don't know what our words might mean to somebody who is looking to get into that space, or maybe there's a girl who's at a university who's like, hey, I'm trying to figure out my way in this space. Like, maybe I want to work in collegiate esports like after I graduate. Maybe I want to work outside of the industry. What does that look like, and what is the forecast from people who are kind of living it day by day? um so those are one of my big like takeaways. I just love being able to talk with people and just kind of like have these conversations where we can just kind of, because no one really knows exactly what's going on, because I mean the
Right.
industry can change at any given moment, but being able to have that community and being able to just like sit down and talk about it and just be real about what we think, because it's okay to say the industry's not doing well, or it's okay to
Right.
say that it's going great. It's just good to have that open dialogue and kind of forecast, especially for people who are really interested and engaged in our space, so they know what's going on.
Right. And to go on that one, you from the collegiate space from whenever you started to now, the collegiate space has changed within that time frame
Oh yeah.
so much. I've heard people go from clubs to now they're in arenas and they have their own like divisions of things or um, just like that kind of space. What would you say the next 5 years would probably look like in your opinion?
Yeah, as of right now, I think one of the big things for the collegiate esports space in particular is the general adoption from the greater sports zeitgeist, if you will.
Hmm.
So right now, our organization, Syracuse Esports, is playing within this organization called the PEC. That we kind of came together with other Division 1 schools that are all like, they're big branded schools. They have good branding. They have good appeal for the greater student populace. Like, hey, I really want to go to the big Orange S school, Syracuse. we want to try to now bring that audience who already cares about traditional athletics and try to push that into the esports space. We'd want to see people like the NCAA, et cetera, and other organizations like that, like actually take a look at it, because there is positives, but there's also a lot of negatives without having that recognition of larger institutions like that. And so if
Mm.
we can start trying to cultivate like a similar type of competition internally, because again, some of the schools we're playing against are Boise State, there's us, there's Ohio, we have SoCal, etc. And we have a couple others. I can't remember off the top of my head. That's Travis Yang's problem. But in general, just being able to show that, hey, this is what that competition could look like if you can then put support behind your organization. Maybe you get like actual full-time staff at some of these schools, because there are some schools like Georgia Tech and UGA and other like big schools like that who have esports programs, but they are only at the club level and
For
there's
sure.
no extra support. Like I think that UGA is a great example because they have a really great student leader who is like trying to kind of make it a thing on their campus. But even then, it's still a struggle because they don't have financial support. They don't have financial backing. They don't have the accessibility to be able to use the school's assets, because the Georgia Bulldog is a really important thing. And if you can
Right.
actually be able to weaponize that logo within the things that you're doing, it really opens up a lot of opportunities for those students. So, what I project in the next 5 or so years is I think that we're going to start seeing some actual good movement, hopefully, within the collegiate space, especially within D1 schools, because as of right now, like it has been getting better in terms of like a lot more schools have been hiring more than just one person to head up their program. It's two people at the very least, which I think that's important because when you look at the grand scheme of things, esports is like a traditional athletics program in and of itself, because you can have up to 45 student athletes at any given point, especially if you have an A roster, a B roster, subs,
Right.
however many titles you have. So that's what I see.
That's awesome. And the cool part is, so for an assistant director, you're pretty much on the front for the next 5 years of like building something for the esports. What would be like a milestone project or a moment for you that you're proud of for like now until the next 5 years?
As of right now, a couple of my big projects are trying to collaborate with some larger brands, but some that aren't necessarily endemic to the esports space.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to gently talk about this one just a little bit.
Yeah.
One organization we're trying to collaborate with is TCG Player. So that's a trading card game company that is like the largest marketplace for online buying and selling and trading of Magic and Pokemon and all the other kind of trading cards, and their office is in Syracuse. Like their office is right downtown. I think it's like less than a 2 mile drive. And being able to collaborate with like brands like that that aren't necessarily endemic to the esports space, because one of my big drives is trying to push um, general esports enthusiasts and students who are engaged with that space to kind of look at the holistic gaming environment. Because
Right.
if a student is super, I said this on the esports and coffee cast, but I'm just gonna keep saying it because it's so important to me. But a student may say that I really want to work at Riot Games. The pool of jobs at Riot Games is this big, and
Right.
I mean I wouldn't want to work at Riot Games as of right now, just given some of the press that's come out. But past that, the jobs are like this big. Like there's very few positions that are open in those positions and in those companies. But if you can like start trying to introduce them to a larger like gaming space, okay, well then a lot more opportunities open up. Maybe you're working at an indie game company like Cult of the Lamb with super massive games. Maybe you're working with TCG Player on their social media and engagement, because there are live event opportunities with those companies to actually go to travel to things. Maybe you're working with Wizards of the Coast on Dungeons and Dragons products. Like there are so many jobs within this space, but if we are so set on only showing a certain like offering of jobs and careers that are possible, then that really handicaps students. So that's one of my big things that I'm trying to like kind of push right now, is trying to create opportunities with content creators. We've been talking to a couple that are like regional based slash want to get involved with higher ed, to kind of show like what goes into like making their products work. Like how do them as a creator like make cool experiences for their audiences? What clicks? What makes it tick? Versus like the general gaming space, because even then, even if you're doing a job that's like, oh, I really want to be an audio engineer for video games, if I'm already working on those skills, that might even open me up to work with an AV company, and I'm now like traveling the country installing AV equipment, or I'm working at a film studio. But if you can start opening those opportunities and showing the possibilities within the space, it opens up a lot more possibilities, especially given how competitive the job market is nowadays.
Yeah, that's exactly how I
Mhm.
feel like right now, especially like in the scholastic to collegiate space, is that most
Mhm.
people see esports or it's just you're either going to be the player or you're going to be the coach. But
Yeah.
there's like way more people that are behind the scenes um, that you can be a part of even if you want to be a part of this space, or you have your moment in this space and then you can take what you're working on to something else other than
Yeah.
esports if that's something you want to do. And really cool to just see how many different roles there are, um, at least in this space.
Yeah.
For even assistant directing, what would be like some roles that you have to like do on your day to day, that kind of like, I don't know, make the assistant director.
Yeah. So a lot of it goes into event planning, facility management. Facility management's huge because what goes into making a facility tick? How many different organizations do I need to be in contact with? Like I have a literal like phone book on the side of my desk that I keep as like my telephone and address book. Every time I find a new contact on my campus, it's like, hey, I'm the person who does XYZ. That is really important. So I now need to mark that this is what they do and this is how they help me keep my facility afloat. I have to also work
Right.
on budgeting. Like, how much money do I have available to me any given scholastic year? What does my budget look like? How can I then divvy up those funds to make sure that we are always providing the next best thing in terms of, oh, we need to have more consoles. A PS5 broke. Okay, what's the process to get that replaced? Like making sure we can have cool events for the students. So that goes into the event planning portion. Like, hey, how do we actually weaponize this space to then do activities for the campus, for the community, for the city, even
Right.
whenever those types of things pop up. You have management because I have two coordinators that I am in charge of and kind of manage their day to day and their scheduling. So those are just a few of the things that go into like what goes into my day to day. And there's a couple things that come like outside of it. Public speaking is a huge one. So if I'm talking to outside groups and vendors, I now know I'm like, I have a sales pitch. This is the things that I'm looking for, and these are the things that I want to activate on. Who do I talk to, and how do I communicate that effectively without breaking eye contact, saying like looking at the floor. It's
Right.
a lot of things like that, and then it's also to what I talked about before, being a mentor. So I'm now trying to pass on the skills that I have learned and recognize as being important within the general business space because a lot of my students want to work within that space. How do I teach them whenever I notice that they're kind of struggling with their public speaking, if they're struggling with their time management and organization? How do I then guide that generation to start like, hey, maybe we get you a planner, maybe we need to figure out a way to weaponize AI so that we can like maybe make you a more recurring schedule. This is
Right.
how you communicate with somebody. This is how you not say like and these are how you use your hands in a beneficial way whenever you're talking to people. So there's lots of little things. There's probably a lot more that I missed, but those are just some of the general like hallmarks that I've kind of seen in like my day to day.
Right. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be an assistant director?
Um, I would say right now, just really networking within the space and getting contacts and starting to like understand the scholastic and the collegiate spaces. Just because there's so many positions that are opening up at this point. A lot of my colleagues that I went to school with, I now see working in scholastic spaces, which I didn't even know those were jobs that were available,
Yeah.
frankly, and that opens up a lot more opportunities. So if you're saying, hey, I want to be a director, assistant director, coordinator, etc. of esports, you should have to keep up with the forums, making sure you're looking at all the different offerings that are available because again, a lot of schools are offering them. We also have to make sure that you are kind of what sets yourself apart from everyone else within that space. If someone's if there's someone else who has also worked at six institutions, how can you be the value? What's your return on investment? If I as a company choose you to be my assistant director, director, executive director, whatever for
Mhm.
that position, what are you going to bring to the table that someone else who's already been working in collegiate esports for the past 5, 6 years? What would differentiate you in that job interview? What would make it be that you as the individual will be the selling point so that you can get that job? I think a lot of that comes with networking. So you can talk to people who are already living this career, seeing what they're up to, and seeing, like, okay, this is what the expectation is for a lot of different institutions. They're expecting that I know how to recruit people, that I know how to hold cool events, that I know how to manage students, that I can maybe even teach curriculum because a lot of schools are looking at that now. So if you have a master's degree, that helps a lot in that portion of it. So those are just a few of the things that I would say, like, just to kind of like look out for and start prepping because the mentorship that I've gotten from so many individuals has really helped me in kind of navigating those interviews, those questions, and those things that go into getting a career like this.
Right. What would you say would be like a trend or a change that you'd want to see in the collegiate space or something that people need to pay attention to?
So a trend that I'm seeing in the collegiate space is, oh man, I that was also a hard one because I don't necessarily keep up with social media, frankly. Like I am really bad at that, and whenever I'm on social media, I'm watching like other parts of the industry and or
Right.
like TTRPGs or TCGs, etc. But something I would like to see change that I see as a trend, and I know that Alyssa Duran mentioned this in Esports and Coffee last night, was the general communication within our space and how we are talking with outside vendors and or game companies even to start having a more professional conversation and lines of dialogue with those companies so that we're not super casual in the lingo that we're using with each other and so that we can start having more serious discussions about how can we actually weaponize and utilize companies within our entire industry because our students are playing these games. How
Right.
can we make those games more beneficial for our students and how can we actually get the companies to interface with the entire program? Because I know that like industries, companies like Blizzard Entertainment tried to do that in the past. They tried to put a lot of money into TESPA, which was TESPA Collegiate, like Heroes of the Dorm, that was Heroes of the Storm's collegiate program, and it just didn't work. I know that Riot Games used to do like League of Legends stuff, and they used to do like whenever someone would register as a program with them, they would send out goodies and swag, and that was really cool, and we really liked that in the space. But for the most part, you don't see that anymore. Like you really don't
Right.
see those companies really engaging with the collegiate space, but like that is their target audience. So how can we actually start to see those people within that space? And I think it starts with the conversation that we are having with those companies, if we're even having them at all.
Right. And then going into TTRPG and TCG, what is that?
All right, this is my fun bit. Um, TTRPGs are like tabletop role playing games, and then
Okay.
TCGs are trading card games. So that's what that stands for.
Perfect. How did you get into those games?
When I was in college, so I have to thank an ex-boyfriend of mine for this, but when I was in college, an ex-boyfriend of mine introduced me to Pokemon, and I was like, I have never played this or heard this in my entire life. Like, I had known it was
Mm,
around. Like, I wasn't like completely blind to the existence of Pokemon slash
right.
Pikachu and all of them, but like, I didn't really engage with it at all. Up until my partner was like, "Oh, I really like the games and all this," and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to Target with this gift card I got for Christmas, and I'm gonna buy a box of Pokemon cards." I opened them, and it was all downhill from there.
Really?
Um, since doing that, like I used to play the Pokemon trading card game, and when I was in college down in Florida, I worked at an organization or company called Cool Stuff Games Inc. They're still present and they're still thriving. And I used to do a lot of trading card game selling. So I was a front desk representative and I used to sell the games. And at those stores, you then get kind of introduced to Dungeons and Dragons. Got really popular when Stranger Things came out,
Yeah.
and I had been playing it a little bit before then. So yeah, it's just been a really great time. It's a great way to connect with people, a whole different side of things, and it's still being able to game, but without having to look at a blue screen like the entire.
Right. Do you think that this could probably trend up to the collegiate space?
Yeah, we do see some schools do it. So like Hearthstone, so different games that kind of like run within that space and are online.
Mhm.
I'll even throw chess into the mix because that is something that NACE still has competitions for. Um, so with chess.com, Hearthstone, MTG Arena, which is the online variant of Magic the Gathering, as well as Legends of Runeterra, and there's another one. It's called, I can't remember its name. Gwent. Yeah, Gwent is the Witcher card game that you can be playing online. But the thing is with those spaces, it's Hearthstone was the best example of it that they used to
Right.
try and like push like a general competition for, but it just struggles. And I think that it's one of those things very similar to like the fighting game community that you'll have even to this day. There's a literal convention happening this weekend called Magic Con Las Vegas, and it's like a bunch of content creators and pro players and stuff are going out to play. And I think we're also starting to see a shift in like the popularity in terms of like how people are engaging with some of these games.
For sure.
So it used to be in the past you'd have like we'd have our Magic Grand Final, so you'd have that leaderboard of the best players would bring their decks to a in-person competition and they would play. Versus nowadays, what you're starting to see is that the casual community is kind of providing more value for the actual publisher and developer. So one of the biggest formats of Magic, which is like basically how you can play Magic the Gathering, is
Hmm.
this format called Commander. And it's a 4 player variant, so you have 4 different players in a game, and it's a multiplayer game. So everyone has their own life total. The base total for Magic is 20. This in this format, everyone has 40 life. They start at 40. Win cons are you draw when you don't have any cards in your deck, you lose. You have 0 life, you lose.
Oh
If
no.
I play a card that says I win the game, then I win the game. And stuff like that. And so it's a way of like playing the game. It's a lot more fun and engaging. You have multiple opponents that you have to try and play around and politic with and say, well, if I help you, don't hurt me for a turn. And
Right.
so that format of Magic has provided, I'll even hazard to say, billions of dollars to Wizard of the Coast, which is the developer of that game. And so I think what we're starting to see is that there's a really big casual community for that, but you can also see that there's lots of there's collectors within the space, there's casual players, and there's competitive players, and there's all different types of games you can play. So there's really a game for everybody. But for the collegiate space, we've seen it try to kind of kick off, but it's never really like stuck, unfortunately.
Right. Hopefully it does like within the next 5 years. I think that that would be something really cool to see. I think I saw like some tabletop competitions at DreamHack.
Hmm.
Um but like nothing where they had like their own event station to where like they had cameras and whatnot. But it'd be kind of cool to kind of see that.
Yeah, they had. So I think one of the big things too about DreamHack Atlanta, and I heard from a lot of people, was that they didn't actually get the license from Wizards of the Coast this year, which they're the people who actually make Magic.
Okay.
So that's why there were still events, but they weren't as big as they normally are because they didn't actually have the license and full backing and support of WotC to actually kick off the competition that year.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think in the collegiate space in general, I think that there's a really big opportunity when it comes to actual like production capabilities when you bring in those types of games. If you ever heard of the show Critical Role, which
Hmm.
is literally like tabletop D&D, and it's filmed and everyone gets to sit around a cool table, that's a great opportunity for students to, one, figure out how to be really cool content creators, have a cool personality, and show themselves off effectively,
Right.
public speaking skills. Also helps with like set production. Well, how do I want to set up a table? How do I want to have cool camera angles to make this really fun and engaging and make a really cool visual event that I can now record and we can have as a recording thing that we like recorded and frequent thing that we incessantly make new episodes for. And because it can also, it's so easy at this point, in my opinion, that you can now make an esports production.
For sure.
I really don't think that there's a whole lot at this point that people can really do differently. I think there are some things. I'm not going to entirely discredit it, but I think there's a really big opportunity in our general space to start creating fun, unique, and different content that not every school is doing. Because every school is doing casters, they're doing a
Yeah.
production. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean.
A good
A large
majority of them.
portion. But I think there's a really great opportunity to start trying to create different forms of gaming media to kind of, again, teach skills, expand their view of what gaming and esports can look like and be, and then again, get them prepared for what their greater career in the gaming space looks like.
That is awesome. And then I only have one more question to ask, but before all the esports, what advice would you give yourself before going into all of it?
Before esports, what would I tell my past self? I would say just figure out time management and work life balance. I'm still a recovering workaholic.
Yeah.
Um, I still think I really struggle with that, but I think just trying to like set healthier patterns in terms of like, hey, make sure you go to the doctor frequently. Make sure you don't skip out on that stuff. Just because you have work doesn't mean that you can't take care of yourself and like actually be able to take a breath and take a step back and just exist. Because I think I do that, but I don't do it in the most healthy ways. Like, oh, I'll just like, oh, it's Friday Night Magic. I'm gonna go play Magic in person,
Right.
or I'm gonna go home and play video games. But it's like, well, I could be using my time a little bit better. I could sit down and read a book, or maybe I take a bubble bath, or maybe I have like make a healthy dinner for myself. But I think I kind of skip out on that because I just get lazy, and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out better work life balance things. So, past me, if you would totally listen, then you should totally take that into account.
Yes, that is awesome. Thank you so much for this podcast or interview thing. It's very great to, at least hear from other different perspectives
Yeah.
in this collegiate space or even just in the gaming space in general. Um where could people find you on socials? Socials.
Yeah, you're good. On socials, you can just find me at Pepto Abysmal. That's my gamer tag, and I will never change it.
You
It's like
shouldn't.
with me for life. On Twitch, it's Pepto Abysmal underscore. On Twitter, it's underscore Pepto Abysmal. Some person like back in 2010 stole it from me, and it's I'm always gonna have an underscore somewhere, but it's okay.
Right. You'll just have to find them one day and then just
I'll
say,
pay you
"Give me."
$5,000. Just give me your username.
If they're watching this, reach out to her. I will go ahead and put all the links in the descriptions or in the show notes wherever you're listening this at, and I will see you next Friday.